today at the National Press Club, RedBalloon founder Naomi Simson, the CEO of Business Chicks Olivia Ruello, and Indigital founder Mikaela Jade. They'll argue there's a quiet revolution happening across Australia as women outpace men at setting up their own businesses. That's today at the National Press Club.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the National Press Club of Australia and today's Westpac address. My name is Sabra Lane. I'm the club's president. I'm also the presenter of the ABC radio program AM. Well, as you've probably seen, we've ditched our usual format today for something a little bit different, a little bit special, I think as well. A panel discussion about enterprising women. Why are more women taking the gamble and setting up their own businesses? The government recently announced a number of new measures to try and encourage women through their own economic independence. Do policies like that matter? Why do women strike out on their own? We have three stunning examples here on the stage with me today about women who have struck out on their own and they've achieved great success. We want to talk about all the barriers that they've faced, their inspiration, and what tips they can also give other women who are wanting to take the risk to go out on their own. If you want to join the conversation today, you can on Twitter by using the hashtag NPC, and our Twitter user handle is @PressClubAUST. Now, let me introduce you to Naomi Simson, the founder of RedBalloon and one of the sharks on the TV program Shark Tank. Olivia Ruello, the chief executive of Business Chicks. It's the biggest business network of its kind in Australia, and it's now branching out around the world. And also Mikaela Jade, a Cabrogal woman who founded Indigital, and she's also the 2018 winner of the New Generation Award run by Verve Clicquot. So first off, Naomi, you worked in the business world. Thank you. Now, you went to university and you had a pretty stock-standard corporate career up until about 2001. What happened?
Well, it was a thing called the internet. Really, the internet was in its infancy in those days, but as a parent of small children, I felt that I was always rushing and, I was not doing anything properly. And I said, I know, I'll start one of those internet things. I'll start an e-commerce website and then I can play with my kids in the day and I'll work at night. And so really it was technology as an enabler to allow me to come home. I wanted to have a career. I'd worked hard to, get a great degree, to have a passion for marketing and finding customers, and I wasn't going to give that up. So I took my journey home and started my enterprise. In that first year, it took me 2 months and 4 days to find our first customer. And the next year we served about 500 customers, and the year after that we were serving 500 a week.
For those who aren't familiar, what is RedBalloon?
Oh, anytime I can say about RedBalloon, I'm very happy. RedBalloon is a gift-giving business, but instead of giving a physical gift, you give a voucher to an activity. And an activity could be anything from a chocolate walking tour to dinner in the Daintree, or it might be a V8 supercar, or it might be a hot air balloon over Canberra. So we support 2,500 small businesses. So the toughest thing for any small business is actually marketing, finding customers and keeping them. And I thought if I could aggregate an industry, give it a brand, then on behalf of every other small business, I could deliver them customers. And in that time, we've delivered 5 million customers to small businesses throughout Australia and New Zealand.
That's pretty phenomenal. Thank you. Olivia Ruello, Business Chicks. Now, you had a sort of a stock-standard career as well, and then you took a punt, becoming the founding CEO for Business Chicks.
I sure did.
Why and how did you do that?
Why? Because I fundamentally believe in the power of women and harnessing women's strengths collectively. We established, Business Chicks was established 13 years ago. It was a database of 250 women. There was a couple of events a year. We've now grown into a community of more than 470,000 women across 11 cities and 2 continents, and it's just growing exponentially every single month. So
is it a modern version of the boys' club for women?
Yes, but it's very inclusive. So I would say sort of, and we certainly invite men along to many of the events that we run, and they really get behind us and what we're doing. So a little bit different, but yes, and there's something about when women build community that maybe is a little bit different to men.
Yeah, and like you say, it's branching out now around the world.
Absolutely.
So it's an Australian enterprise that's going
And North
around
America. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So exciting times.
And Mikaela, you were a ranger when you were pretty dispirited about how Indigenous culture was being explained to visitors. So tell me what happened. How did you go from being a ranger to starting up your own business explaining culture?
Yes, well, I'm actually still a ranger. So I still work with parks. Parks is my passion. I've been a park ranger since I was 18 and I've had the privilege of working all around the world. I actually was really quite frustrated when we would put metal signs in front of 30 and 60,000-year-old cultural places in our landscape. And when I discovered my own Aboriginal heritage, it became apparent to me that we needed a new way to communicate stories. And I was fortunate enough at that time to see augmented reality for the first time at the University of Canberra. And I went home and had a shower. And I came out of the shower and declared to my partner that I'm going to make augmented reality storytelling for Indigenous people to share our stories at cultural places around Australia.
All right, there might be some people who don't actually understand what augmented reality is.
Okay.
So getting your mobile phone.
So if anyone's played Pokemon Go, that's augmented reality. But also, if you haven't played Pokemon Go, it's taking your phone and using image recognition of cultural places, objects and artworks to play 3D animated content that's directed by senior traditional owners over that site to give you perspectives.
Perspectives, and you make stories come alive for people, really.
We do, yeah. We also make holograms now, so we can make a hologram in the middle of the room or on your table, so you can experience Indigenous cultural storytelling anywhere.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Why get involved in startups? Now, we've had an interesting report out today. The NBN has done an analysis and actually found that in regions that are connected to the NBN, that they've found something quite remarkable happening. They've found that the number of women that's starting up their businesses has actually gone through the roof. 2.3% doesn't sound like much, but that's actually 20 times the pace of growth that's happening in areas that don't have the NBN. So women are starting up their own businesses and feeling empowered. Each of you was involved in a startup. Is there enough attention being given now to helping women start their own businesses? Naomi.
I'm so excited to see, and I've been out in the field talking to people. I feel very fortunate I'm a role model for others and I share what I've learned. And as such, you know, in the last year I've been to Mount Isa, Bundaberg, Rockhampton, Shepparton, and the message that I give to all of the people that I see, men and women, is you've got it all. You don't have Sydney traffic, you can have an incredible lifestyle with your family, and you can make a really big contribution. So what is it that you want to be world famous for? So the most important thing for us to do for startup is to encourage people to have the vision. What is it that they really want to achieve? You can be world class at anything, anywhere in this country now. That's transformational for Australia to be globally successful. However, how do we also harness that enthusiasm? And there is business acumen that is required to sit underneath it. So it's one thing to have an idea, 1% idea, 99% execution. So what I believe we need more of is how do we provide people with the business acumen and the support networks to help them grow the business. At any given point, more than a third of Australians think they've got a cracker of an idea that they want to turn into a business. I promise you, not a third of Australians should be business owners.
Yeah. Olivia, how many people actually turn to your network who are thinking of starting up a business and they come to Business Chicks saying, how do I get this idea off the ground? And is that part of what Business Chicks, what it does? It helps give women the ideas as to, well, how do they turn that idea into a business? How do they get it going?
Sure. To a degree, that's what we do. There's no lack of women starting businesses. you know, in regional Australia, in urban Australia, women are starting businesses. I mean, there's no doubt that technology has to be the enabler for starting businesses. So, of course, there's that correlation with NBN. In areas where there's access to fast internet, the ability to start a business is going to be a little bit easier. Excuse my voice. But what we're seeing, you know, in terms of getting to the point of being able to scale a business is where we're seeing a little bit of a gap. And fundamentally, one of what I consider the 4 ways that you scale, you know, what you see with businesses that successfully scale, in my opinion, beyond access to funding and capital, a lot of resilience, grit, determination, a very strong vision and business plan. But the other huge aspect of that is having a very, very strong support network around you, and that's what Business Chicks does. So we do see women coming to us looking for a support network that includes not just friendships, but advisors, mentors, sponsors, skills, and what Naomi spoke to as well earlier around how do we give you the business acumen. And so we do a lot of things around masterclasses, which women in regional areas can access as well now, and run a lot of events that uplift and build skills. We currently have 30 women over in California this week on a study and knowledge tour, which is 30 female entrepreneurs from Australia, which is super exciting. And they're learning fundamental skills for businesses in California around how they're scaling businesses over there. So, yes.
Mikaela, I think you've got an interesting perspective on all of this, because you started your business when you're in Kakadu. Starting a business in Kakadu, my goodness, you're in outback Australia.
Yeah.
What kind of support did you give, and how daunting was that in Kakadu, thinking, right, I'm starting up a business here, where do I go for help?
Yeah, it was hugely daunting, but fortunately there's an amazing community of both women and men in Kakadu who, once I explained my idea to, were really prepared to embrace taking some risks with new technology. So in Dabaroo and Kakadu, people are incredibly culturally grounded. So you can imagine explaining something like Pokemon Go and how we would go about building that was kind of challenging. So, but they really embraced the opportunity to work with me, and I think it was being able to work locally with what I had first to start getting that minimum viable product prepared so people could see it. And once we were able to demonstrate it, bringing in outside support networks to help us really build our business. But I really have to agree with what both Naomi and Olivia have said. Coming from the public service, I had zero business acumen, and my mum and dad basically it's true for me.
Nervous laughter around the room.
My mum and dad told me that the very best investment that you're guaranteed a return on is an investment in your own education. So I actually went online and did a thing called B School and took myself through a diploma of business and entrepreneurship. And that was just so simply I could explain my idea to people that could potentially support me.
That's a really interesting point. I'm going to jump around in my notes because that's a really interesting segue. It leads to the traditional model of education. Is it teaching kids how to be entrepreneurs and good businessmen and women? Naomi?
Look, there's the fundamentals of business. You know, you've got to earn more than you spend and then you'll make a profit, and money is the way that our system works. Interesting, I was invited to sit on the board. I sit on the board of the Business and Economics faculty of the University of Melbourne. I'm a graduate at BCom, and after all of these years they invited me back. And when I was invited to be on the board, they said, it's kind of because you represent small business. And they said it as if it was an apology. And I said, I'm so proud to be able to be a voice on behalf of small business. It's what we need more than anything, is role models and people to say this is possible. And to talk about the variety of small businesses, from entrepreneurship to self-employed to micro businesses. And they said, the reason we're asking you is 60% of our undergraduates want to run their own business. And we've got bankers and lawyers and accountants and all sorts on our board. But who do they aspire to look like? Who do they want to be like? And so it's very important that we show people the way forward, that we support these massive institutions as they go through a fundamental shift and change, as the notion of work changes. The future of work is very different than the work we sit in today. And as such, we need nimble, agile, educational, not just institutional, but also like Mikaela did, where she was able to pop into specifically the skill set she needed to then bring that to her own commercial enterprise. And it's very, very important that we be agile in education.
Olivia, are you an adherent to the Madeleine Albright School of Feminism, that there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women?
Yes. That's right. And men that don't help women and vice versa. I think we've all got to help each other, particularly in this day and age. I see a huge amount of generosity from women. Undervalued generosity. Women give. We talk about, even within the corporate corridors of Australia, if you're a woman in leadership, there's an expectation that you have about 10 mentees. And as if women don't already have enough on their plate. But I think it's wonderful, and they have a beautiful generosity of spirit that we see in spades, certainly in our community, of wanting to give back. And I think unless we're reaching behind as we're reaching up, we're never going to get anywhere. So we certainly see that in spades in Business Chicks.
All right. Here's a tricky question about finance. Mikaela, I know that your idea, you tried to get money for it here, and you ended up getting money from the UK.
Yeah, I got support from the UK.
That's
so
a bit awkward, isn't it, that Australians wouldn't back your idea?
Yeah, look, at the time, it's 2012, augmented reality is really in its infancy. It was really hard to describe too, because I hadn't made it yet, so it was made in my head, but I really couldn't show anyone, so they would be like, oh, that girl's a bit crazy. So yeah, I ended up going international to get support, both from my development team and also for in-kind support and mentorship. So because I was living in Kakadu, it's actually really hard when you're in rural communities that are surrounded by a mine or even owned by the mine, to be able to bring talent in to live in your community, to be a part of your business. So I thought, if I have to work online with people, I'm going to work with whoever I can work with, and I don't really care where they live. So that's where I was able to build an international team that now works day to day, working with me on our projects at Indigital.
Naomi, how worried are you that, given the focus of the Banking Royal Commission on lending practices, that the big banks in particular are going to be really reticent to taking a gamble and giving small businesses loans? Are you worried about that phenomenon? And what would your advice be to young women who are thinking about getting money, about being flexible in talking to people about where they get the dosh from?
I am really worried about the ability for small business to get the funding that they need. I have heard some horror stories of what has happened in only the last 3 months. Somebody who had an overdraft who wasn't using it and thought, oh, I could give that up. And the banker advised, never, ever give that up, because you will never, ever get it again. So when the traditional methods of funding. Now remember, debt is so much cheaper than equity, and I see too many businesses who have got to do their angel round, then their Series A, then their Series B, and by the time they get to Series D, they own less than 1%. Yet they did all of the work, the hundreds and hundreds of hours every month that they had to put into their enterprise. So that means there needs to be a different sort of a model, a different understanding. Is it the accelerator model? Many of the big corporations have an accelerator because they're looking for innovation to come into their business. They're looking for disruption. But then how do we identify which ones are going to work? And their constructs are the same as the same commercial discipline or KPIs that they've always had, key performance indicators. So they're looking for a new business to have the same level of performance than they did in the whole old world. And so we need to shift the way we think about what is it we're really trying to contribute here. Money is an enabler, but ultimately it is not the only goal, and most startups start with the love, the passion of, I want to make the world a better place. So I'm materially important about the bank funding. I'm materially important about the hit and miss hope game of many startups when they look for funds. I'm materially concerned about the business acumen of how you report back to investors. So for me, it's a partnership that we're beginning to look for. What level of partnership, sponsorship? Who is already talking to my customer set that would have value if I was able to join with them? If there's one thing that I see for Australia, we need to join together to compete. And funding is a key element of that. So we need to work together to find audiences rather than working separately.
Olivia, what's your advice to women about going and finding the right investor for their business?
I mean, the sort of women that are that we speak to in our community have issues attracting investment sometimes. I think the whole venture capital scene is still very much skewed towards male-run and driven businesses, and it's still dominated by men. So we're still hearing old sexist stories around conversations that women have when they go in to pitch their business ideas to VCs. So that's still concerning me.
Yeah, I think there's interesting research out last month. Still, the big venture capital firms, 2 out of 3 times their money's going to men rather than women, and men tend to get more money than women.
But on that, so some of the big funds have produced funds, $500 million just to go into women enterprises.
Yes.
But they're assessing the pitch on the same way that they were assessing the other pitches. So they've not shifted their mindset to say, well, what value can I add here?
Yes.
So in other words, they haven't changed their KPIs and their metrics. They said, you can have all this money, but I want you to look just like a man when you pitch to me anyway, but this is set aside just for women. But if we don't look like them, we don't sound like them. Like I know women who just because they're blonde, it's like this glazed over look.
I also
Anyway, let's not go there.
I also think fundamentally, some women-led businesses, the sort of products, if it's a product-based business, might be something that a male just doesn't understand fundamentally. So if you're going into a room to pitch for funding and you're running a high-end lingerie business and you've got a room of 5 blokes sitting around a table, they don't really understand the customer and they don't really understand the product, you're inherently disadvantaged as a woman. And I think that we're still hearing those stories where it was, I didn't feel heard in the room, they didn't appreciate my pitch, they didn't understand my customer. Women are still running businesses that are, bricks and mortar businesses, retail businesses, product-based businesses that perhaps men just don't understand in the same way that women do. So I would say that that's still an issue as well.
All right, I have a question for all of you. This can't go on uncommented on today, especially given it's been a big issue up the hill at Parliament. It's about the treatment of women in politics. For the life of me, I can't understand why any of you don't put your hand up for a job in politics. What do you think, Naomi? I'm going to ask each of you for your opinion on this. What do you think something has to change?
If I had my way, I'd go up there and punch a few of them in the nose. I'm just so appalled by this behaviour. And if this was in corporate Australia and inside one of my businesses, I would be pilloried, and it's just appalling. And the thing is that people have a choice. People have a choice of where they give their gifts, where they give their energies and how they want to make a difference. And so when people talk to me about leadership, I say, what is the best way I can make sure that I use my gifts for the good of our community? What can I do? And all I see when I look at Canberra is I could not make a difference there. So when you have strong people, strong women, not aspiring to lead through our current system, then you begin to think, well, what is happening to the system? Is the system overtaking the power of true leadership, conviction, and a love for our country, our love for our people, a love for what's possible? So I believe that every woman who believes in leadership, who believes in the ethics and the power, should start wearing red shoes. We need a symbol to remind us every single day of the role we need to play for our daughters, our granddaughters. We've had enough. The suffragettes did their work. They got us the vote. We must remind each other. It's not you know, the fact that Julie today donated her beautiful shoes to a museum and said, this was the shoes I wore. And Sherry at the Chief Executive Women wore red shoes. We see Annabelle Crabb wearing red shoes. There is a reason why I wear red shoes. To every day remind myself I am a leader for others. I am a role model for others. It is important that I show people that I am a leader, and I will stand up and I will be proud to be woman. I am proud to be a female.
Olivia, you used to work in HR before you had this career. How would, if that behaviour that we've been seeing and witnessing and hearing in Parliament had happened in the corporate world, how would that be treated?
Instant dismissal. You know, like it's, and I've worked in strategy roles, and certainly when you see powerful forces of senior men intimidating, bullying, isolating women, it's just not tolerated anymore. It's embarrassing. You know, these strong, capable women, I mean, what's going on is an absolute travesty. You know, I think the stand that Julia Banks has taken is to be applauded. I think that there's a standard that is happening across politics, corporate Australia, the public sector potentially, that says enough is enough. It is unacceptable in 2018 or ever to treat women as lesser than men. And women are now saying, sorry, but we're not actually going to tolerate it. But the unfortunate thing is that they're still treated, particularly in politics, as disruptors or being a little bit, you know, oh, it's such a pain. And it's, you know, standing up for yourself and standing up for other women is absolutely critical in terms of moving the needle forward to achieve equality in this country, and we are still very far from that. So I would say that we need to see more of this. We need to see more action taken, less just putting up with it because that's the way things have always been. Well, maybe that is the way that things have always been, but that's absolutely not good enough, and we need to see some pretty urgent changes. So instant dismissal, I'm sorry, but the government, it's just unacceptable.
Mikaela?
Yeah, I'm actually really excited that there is a bunch of Indigenous women at Parliament House today with Straight Talk who are all aspiring to be female Indigenous politicians. It's a hot topic and I'm really excited for that. I want to see more. I want to see more of our women take a leadership role. We're natural, not just agitators, but we're there championing for our communities and have been for so many hundreds of years in this country. And it's the opportunities now for our women to step up, and we've already got amazing female leadership in politics with Linda Burney and Vonda Malone as the Mayor of the Torres Strait Islands. I mean, it's phenomenal what's happening. I'm really proud to get behind them, and I'll champion them every single day, and all the other women that step up to be politicians as well. You know, it's a tough gig.
You tempted?
Yeah. Not yet. I'm busy doing technology at the moment. That's my gift, so I'll stick with that.
All right, we're going to shortly take some questions from the floor. But before we do that, the idea that you can't be what you can't see, a lot of girls now are being inspired and enthused by things like good night stories for rebel girls, a shout out for girls, books that have been published in the last 12, 18 months that have simplified versions about women and to really inspire them. Are these sorts of things making a difference? How optimistic are you all about the future? Naomi?
Look, I feel very fortunate because I had strong role models. My mother worked for the Monash University Maths Department on one of the early computers in Australia, and every day she'd go off to work in her suit and work on this computer. It was a computer, by the way, about the size of this room. And then she went to work with one of Australia's great entrepreneurs, Lindsay Cattermole, and her business was also in computing. And so I used to go as a young girl to these work events, and for me it was my normal. I just didn't know there was any different. It was just my normal. So it was always expected I would go to university, I would have a career. When it came time to doing something different, my father had been a small business owner, and I thought, right, I can do that too. I can do that too because I saw it. And yet now with my 120 team members, often they didn't have the role models. And last Friday night was our Christmas party, and many of my gorgeous colleagues came up to me and whispered, "You do a good job for all of us. It's important, keep going." And I think that's the other thing. Sometimes leadership can get lonely, and we need to all support each other and say, no, 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 we see you, we see what you're doing, we see your contribution. So that is why I do what I do. It's why I chose to be on that TV program. I promise you, it was only about showing people that we have a voice, that we are articulate, that we are entrepreneurs, that we can run big businesses. And in our show, there's 26 of them around the world, and in our show, it's the only show anywhere on the planet that had 2 women as the founders, whereas 2 out of the panel of 5. Whereas in the US, the show, Barbara and Laurie never appeared together until season 5. In our show, more women get invested than men. It's because gender is not the conversation. It's either a good business or it's not a good business. And can I work with you? So until it becomes normal, until we don't have to talk about it, until they don't preface my name with female entrepreneur, I'm just entrepreneur. You can see I'm wearing a red dress, it's pretty obvious I'm female. So that's when we've got equality. So role models are very important. We must tell our stories. We must amplify each other's stories.
Olivia?
Yes, I own all those stories. I have a 19-month-old who I love reading all those stories to. She's still just currently ripping the pages, but she'll take it in soon, I'm sure. But like Naomi, I had very strong female role models growing up. A grandmother who was president of Probus, a very hard-working single mother of 4 children as well. And I think that the more we show and role model behaviours, the more inspiring it's going to be for young women. But I would also say, if you can't see any role models, be your own role model. I wouldn't let not being able to see something hold you back, because otherwise we're always going to be held back. So I would encourage young women to also be their own role models, because you might not always be able to see one, but more and more we are seeing them, and I'm really hopeful for the future. I think the generation of young women coming through now, the problems that they're solving, the way that they're working together and collaborating is like nothing we've ever seen before. 2 generations ago, women hardly worked. You know, now we're raising young women to believe that anything is absolutely possible, and I genuinely believe that to be true as well. So I am very hopeful.
Mikaela?
Yeah, well, I have 2 young daughters, so it's my daughter Amy's 13th birthday today, so happy birthday, Ames. She is starting her own tech company. She's got ideas for using augmented reality for saving threatened species, so she's working on that behind the scenes at the moment. And my younger daughter Jasmine wants to take over my company before she even finishes school, so I think I've raised 2 strong girls in tech. But I'd also like to add, I'm really keen that we don't leave our aunties and our elders behind on this journey. I'm working on a great program with SharedPath and Microsoft at the moment, working with older women, and I'm working with aunties from the Torres Strait who are saying, I want to build a blockchain. Let's do this. And they're leading the young women in new technologies because they were able to have an opportunity to play with the technology and see how that might be relevant to their communities. So, yeah, we're working at both ends of the spectrum with young kids, but also with the aunties on country, because they're our knowledge holders, they're the leaders of our communities, and they deserve to be invested in as well.
Fantastic. Our first question from the floor, Mrs. Schubert.
Mrs. Schubert, as the Director of the National Press Club, thank you so much for your thoughts today. I wondered if I could ask you to meditate on setbacks and stick-to-itiveness. So has there been a moment in each of your careers and business developments where someone put up a roadblock or was dismissive, and did it make you mad? Did it make you determined to get around that and get even? How did you handle that, and how did you have the mindset that enabled you to keep trucking in the face of a profound setback?
I'm happy to start. I find that some people just don't take me seriously, and that really bothers me, and I prove them wrong most days. And they completely underestimate me. We serve a customer every 1 minute. We turn over $80 million. This time next year it'll be $100 million. how big do I have to get before you're going to take me seriously, and about the number of customers we serve, about our contribution to our community in commerce and tax. So that concerns me, is that they underestimate me, and I believe it or not, people sometimes patronise me. How dare they? But I have a role in that, and my role is to sit forward. My role is to respond, and I have a request of every woman in this room. I have a request of everybody who is asked by a journalist for a comment, that you stand up and make comment. For every woman who's asked to do a speaking engagement, you get on the stage and you do your speaking engagement. It's not for you, it's for your audience. Because if we're given the opportunity and then we don't take it, then we will never get to where we need to be. So that keeps driving me, is, you know, that just little look away when they go, oh yeah, she's going on again. I could tell you some stories, but we're on national television and I might not be... but, you know, even my own board has completely underestimated me. They completely underestimate the vision that I have and the contribution that we can make to our community. I intend to serve and experience every second somewhere on earth. And they say, but why? Because I make a difference to community everywhere and family. So, yeah, it does challenge me, and it does. You know, at university, I was called dumb numb. I've been proving those bastards wrong ever since.
Olivia, setbacks?
That's a tough act to follow, Naomi. I think anyone that has any sort of platform is inherently privileged, and I do not take that privilege lightly. We have a very large platform, and I take the opportunity to use my voice very, very seriously, and so that is something that guides me in terms of who am I to sort of play small, to speak to the Marianne Williamson quote, which we all love it on our wall at Business Chicks. We are representing thousands of women that don't always have the opportunity to have a voice or to be able to contribute their voice. So that's something that grounds me every single day. I've had a lot of personal and professional setbacks over my nearly 40 years. And I have to say, the one single thing that it has enabled me to build that muscle of resilience, or even move beyond resilience into grit, has absolutely come down to the community and connections that I've created. You know, you feel least resilient when you're most disconnected. And I just, that's a truism for me. The more connected I feel, the more connected I am with the women around me. It's a lot of women around me, the more resilient I feel in terms of picking yourself up, dusting yourself off and getting on with it. Because I truly think that the quicker you can do that, there's important work to do. And we've just got to keep on keeping on, right? So, yeah, that works for me.
Mikaela, what works for you?
Yeah, what works for me? Well, something that did really bother me was when people told me that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people don't use technology. So that has stuck with me since the day that happened, which was 6 years ago, and that drives me to be the best that I can every day with women in technology and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women in their country in technology. And yeah, there's just... Indigenous women have the most unique ability to pull together things that appear to be divergent. So we've got the old and the new ideas, and the old and the new knowledge, and the old and new concepts. And usually those things sit apart, but we've got a unique ability to pull them together to create something of value, not just to ourselves, but to our communities. And when I sit in a community and I'm talking about drones and an auntie says to me, can I hop in it? I'm like, boom, Uber Air. You've just invented Uber Air. You're amazing. So I speak to women all the time on country about bringing ideas that don't naturally fit together to create new value that other people might have overlooked.
Tim Shaw.
Thanks, Sabra. Tim Shaw from Radio 2CC here in Canberra, and a member of the Press Club Board. Thank you so much for being here. I was with Julie Bishop this morning when she made the remarks as follows: for our nation to reach its full potential, we need more women in the federal parliament. Our topic today about entrepreneurialism and empowering particularly women, I need you to share with us that first sale. Who did you have to convince? Who did you have to convince to buy your idea, to buy into the concept, to buy that first product? And did they buy your honesty, your integrity, your personality, your passion, your enthusiasm? What got you over the line? Because you can't be an entrepreneur unless you make a sale. Tell us your story.
So as I mentioned, it was 2 months and 4 days before I made the first sale. And I launched the RedBalloon business in 2001 in the first week of October, which was 3 weeks after September 11. And I'd given the $25,000 of a family savings to an outsourced web developer, and he all of my money to the outsourced web developer, and the website came back and was red with black writing. You could hardly read it. It was terrible. It was framed. I thought it was fabulous. I remember this guy, I used to ask people the question, did anybody see our first website? And this guy put his hand and goes, yeah, I was studying multimedia at UTS. Yeah. My lecturer brought it in as an example of the worst website he'd ever seen. Anyway, I thought it was fabulous. So I turned it on, and the world had shifted from the time that I'd invested the money. I'd found the business partners, and in this day it was the very early parts of the internet, and even convincing the small businesses to have a computer and a modem to dial up into the web. You know, we had to beg, please, please, please. And I said, I will deliver your customers. And they go, yeah, everybody says that. And I go, no, I will. So there's a lot of begging went on to get our business partners. A lot of walking in the yellow pages. Do you remember the yellow pages? Yeah, we loved that. Anyway, so I turned the website on. September 11 had happened, and nothing happened. Just nothing happened. I was like, oh, nobody's come. And every day my husband would go off work and come back, how's the project going, sweetheart? I say, no customers today, maybe tomorrow. And this went on for 2 months and 4 days. I got so desperate, I would tie balloons around my briefcase and walk in Martin Place in Sydney, hoping that somebody would see the URL, type it in, and maybe come and buy something. Yeah, hope is not a strategy, it doesn't actually work. But finally, Damien Chown bought a stress-busting massage for his friend Scott Hill. And could I just say, it was actually order number 14, because I'd done 13 before to check the website worked, and there was nothing wrong with it. I called Damien Chown and I said, hi, I'm Naomi Simson. I'm the Chief Experience Officer for RedBalloon. I'd like to call all of my customers to find out how you experience the website. And he said, oh, you know, it was, he said, I didn't know what I'd done. And anyway, and I said, what did you think of the website? He goes, oh, it was crap. I invited our very first customer, Damien Chown, to the launch of the Big Red Group. The Big Red Group houses a number of our businesses, which are all facing the experiences industry, but with different brands. So Adrenaline, Ready.com, Marketics and so forth. And I invited him and he said, does this mean I get a lifetime golden ticket to RedBalloon activities? Because I was the first customer. No, you get to pay for them. Yeah, you never forget your first customer. I felt so responsible. I felt that the trust, you know, you never forget how you feel and how important it is that you deliver on your word. And so when I'm even talking to my team now of 120, I say never ever take the customer for granted. They are here but by the grace of God in this moment. They might go somewhere else.
Olivia, how hard was it getting membership of Business Chicks?
It was literally one by one. So there's a lot of women's communities that are rising now, and they're doing wonderful, and we invite, you know, any sort of communities, but you can't just suddenly create a community. It's been a decade in the making of literally sitting on the phones, calling people to buy one ticket to one event. And it's been as pounding the pavement. And it's been authentic relationships and actually building relationships with women. And I love the whole, you know, every time you buy from, and certainly from what I see in our community with our female entrepreneurs and business owners, when you buy a product from a female business owner, there's a woman somewhere in her kitchen in a robe doing a little happy dance. And I certainly know that that's a truism as well. So, but it's a lot of hard work.
Mikaela, your idea was really innovative, but convincing someone to actually put it to use.
Yeah,
how long
right.
did that take?
A really long time and not a long time at the same time. So my mum and dad were my first customer and my amazing partner Pete. But I did a very public release of our app, and I released it via a Kickstarter. So it was either going to be wildly successful or a big flop. And up until the last 2 hours of that Kickstarter, it was going to be a big flop. But fortunately for me, we got over with $1,000 extra. But there were 300 people that got behind us in that Kickstarter, and I'm eternally grateful for that network of 300 people that watched me build this company from a remote community with senior traditional owners and an international team who I'd never met except over Skype. So yeah, it was very public, and I'm glad that it succeeded, and I'm really fortunate now to have an amazing partnership with an organisation called SharedPath and also with Microsoft and Microsoft Philanthropy. So we're moving forward now with a lot of work together, and I think partnerships is an important part of the mix to make your business successful.
Our next question, Virginia Hasiger.
Thanks, Sabra, and thank you to all of you. What amazing stories and really inspirational. Naomi, Mikaela, I just love the fact that you came up with your idea and then said, oh, but I had zero business acumen, and now look at you. I mean, it's just such a great story, and I hope we hear more of these stories. But I'd like to just to reflect a little bit on why this is happening. And Olivia, I think you said at one stage, look, there's no shortage of women starting up businesses, their own businesses. And as the research now shows us, in those areas with NBN, there's been a great growth of women starting up their own businesses and becoming entrepreneurs. Is this a reflection on something a little bit deeper, rather than just some women wanting to work from home for family reasons? But is there also a reflection here on women possibly turning their backs on industries, organisations, corporates that aren't catering well enough for the flexibility and the diversity of talent and diversity of style that women bring to the workplace? I'll open that up to all of you.
Sure. I'm a member of the Chief Executive Women. In fact, they were the ones that connected me to this event, and the Chief Executive Women are all very senior. They're either executives on boards, and our job is we create sponsorship and scholarships for women who are at the second tier to make sure they've got the education to go to Harvard, so that they're absolutely leading edge in their. And yesterday we had a lunch, the group of us, and we were very much talking about disruption. Where does disruption come from? How do we disrupt ourselves? And the future of work. So in listening to your question, to me what I hear is, what is the future of work really going to look like? And are we seeing a wave of self-employment because people are choosing that they do not want to participate in either the Sydney traffic, the commute, they don't want to participate in a political environment, they're unsure about their contribution. Now, what we know from the very basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs is that we need to belong. And often we join an enterprise because we want to be part of something. But if we don't believe anymore in what that institution is doing, then we say, I give up so much to be here just for a paycheck. Should I choose to do something, even if it's not what they believe in, but they're earning their own money and they work on their own terms? So this is a broader question about the future of work. It's about AI, what jobs will be taken versus what will be created. But ultimately, if I look in the book that I wrote, Ready to Soar, I really tried to identify where these pockets of startups or new business registrations were coming from. And the majority are over the age of 45. So, is it the time when children have left? Is it the time when people are more financially independent? Is it the time they've paid off their mortgage? But also the good thing that we know is when people start businesses at an older age, they're more successful because they've got life experience. I was going to make a joke about Mikaela and the public service, but maybe we won't go there, because everywhere you go you get commercial understanding. In university there's grants, there's all sorts of ways. So the broader the experience. So I think there's a bigger conversation to have of how the constructs of work, how we unite, because the hardest thing is finding more customers. If you are a professional consultant, which is a very important part of the Business Chicks group, is how you network to make sure you have a reputation beyond a digital reputation, because all business comes back to trust. as well as being a self-employed consultant, contractor, or micro business. So there's a wonderful conversation yet to have about how we mould our future of work and come together as collectives to be competitive globally.
I think as well, women want to make their own rules because the rules don't always work for women. And it's still persisting. I think that it's still, until there's some major structural changes that happen, until there's more access to affordable childcare, more flexibility with childcare, subsidised nannies, various different ways of creating childcare arrangements for children, we're still going to have, there's still a lack of flexibility in corporate Australia, there's still not enough women making decisions in corporate Australia, there's still barriers to entry in terms of moving into leadership roles. So women are sort of saying, you know what, there's still a gender wage gap that persists. It's over 21%. I mean, that's just not good enough. So until we can start to even the playing field, women are going to make decisions to drive their own opportunities. I think that women are inherently ambitious, they are creative and passionate and all those things that Naomi talks about a lot as well, and they have lots of ideas and they want to drive them forward. So if I make a decision between earning X amount of dollars and I'm not getting paid as much as my male counterpart, why wouldn't I go out on my own and try and give it a good red hot go and make a little bit more money and become financially a little bit more independent than I would be staying working for someone else, being overlooked, being talked over in a boardroom, etc. This is still persisting. It seems like it maybe is starting to change a little bit, but still women are experiencing these barriers.
Just quickly, it's a little chicken and egg too. If we had more women sitting at the cabinet table, maybe we would have more of those
better
policies.
Policy, I would say we would.
Mikaela?
Yeah, I think there's an amazing opportunity happening at the moment in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities because there's internet and there's an internet connection, and we don't have to let small communities decide what the business value of our ideas are anymore. We can let the market decide, and we can let the international market decide. So I've got some amazing women that I met with yesterday from Groote Island who make bush medicine, and they're selling their products internationally through a website that they built. Sharon Windsor from Indigital, she's selling her products internationally, and the market is deciding that our products are amazing value and amazingly valuable. So I think that's a really exciting thing that having connectivity has been able to achieve for our communities, and having this rising of Indigenous women in business being successful empowers our young girls to think of business as an opportunity for them as well. So
part of the recent narrative, though, has been about speeds and the internet not being fast enough.
Yeah.
Is it fast enough for regional Australia when you were working in Kakadu?
I built a cutting-edge tech from Jabiru. Does anyone know where that is? It's 3.5 hours drive from Darwin. Any internet connection helps our communities deliver businesses internationally. And, I don't see a lot of women sitting there saying the internet's too slow. We've got internet, and that's amazing. And you can work with anyone around the whole world. You can work with the best person in tech futures or future skills from your community on country if you have a connection.
Next question's from Peter Strong.
Thank you very much. I work for the Council of Small Business, and recently we ran around a panel on women in business. And we had some of our members there, and the fabulous women doing fabulous things, all sorts of things. And we had a female politician on the panel as well. We talked about paid parental leave and that our employees get it, and basically we, or they, the female employers don't get it, basically. But we got to manage it on behalf of the government. We talked about domestic violence leave, which is, of course, a terrible thing, and people are talking about putting it in the workplace relations system, but self-employed people don't get access to that sort of support, but they need to supply that support to their employees. We talked about mental health, and that's an issue for employees, but there's 800,000 home-based businesses out there. Most of them are women, and they're invisible when it comes to health issues. They're workplaces. Should we follow that up? Should we say to policymakers, when you write a policy, it's not a machine at the end of it, it's an individual and it has gender, or should we leave it alone?
I think the answer is that you said it yourself, is there's 800,000. They're all 800,000 individuals with individual aspirations. One of the statistics you didn't speak about is the lack of superannuation. So self-employed often don't have superannuation, and we have a vast, there's something like 50% of women over the age of 50 only have $8,000 in their superannuation. Like, they just don't have any. And so I guess what I want to see, because I'm an entrepreneur, so I believe in the power of choice. So what we want is to make things available to people so that they can participate. In the same way as is with education. Could I do something different? How would I do this? And education for me is a big part of it. What services do I want to participate? But it is definitely not a policy, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. The reason they choose that life is because they want their independence. So therefore make things available. I would love to see, though, that we could connect people in a way. And, you know, we used to think that that was Facebook doing that, or Google or somebody. I promise you they are not connecting us in a way that is constructive and gives power to the individual. So that's another conversation, because as we know, we've just had the My Health thing and everyone's like, oh, I'm out. And yet it was intended for the good of the people. That was the intention. So how do we create collective out of all of these small voices so that they become one voice and truly competitive and have great services and support that they need? I don't have an answer.
I think what you're speaking about with that question as well is, I think everything has to be humanised. You know what I mean? Policy, at the end of policy, is a customer, a human being. It's the same way in private sector. If you forget about the living example of your customer, you're never going to do well in business. Full stop. If you're creating policies and forgetting about that woman in her kitchen running a business, then I would question whether or not that policy is effective. Because if you're not having conversations with the people who the policies are going to be affecting, then I fail to understand why you'd develop a policy. I just think it's odd. So if you're not having conversations every day with business owners, with female entrepreneurs, and you're creating all of these policies, then I think that it's wasted. You know, we had a robust conversation this morning about the package that Kelly O'Dwyer announced last week, and it's all terrific, and, you know, I won't go into that, but there's certain things I think that are terrific. I think there's always more money that's needed. I think it just scratches the surface, to be totally honest with you. But what I'm most interested in is, what is the actual application of this policy? What does that look like? What do these mentoring programs look like? Because I'd need to actually see that they're you know, evidence-based, and someone has spoken to an actual woman about her lived experience and whether or not this is going to be effective and support her to grow, scale, live a more safe life, etc., etc. So I think with anything, whether it's policy or business, unless you are connecting with the customer every single day, then you're not doing a good enough job.
Mikaela?
Yeah, I think you just, together with Naomi, gave the country a great business idea. I can see a platform.
Parental leave is, you know, it's kind of in this very early stage of a child's life. And when actually it takes a good, well, I'm thinking it's 25 years now before you get them out the door. So the infrastructure to raise great children and support children through education and family, and what role does community play in that, and local community, as well as then we have other people who are choosing not to work full-time, want to work part-time but still be purposeful. And I think of my father-in-law as a lollipop man, and that's a very sought-after job, to get the lollipop man job, because you stay connected, you're purposeful, and they've also structured those roles so that they don't lose their pension. So I wonder about how we connect people in local communities to support the raising of our children, not just in this short moment. And, you know, I've got children all in their 20s now, not just this short moment. And I watch so many parents just do the logistics, do the juggle, day in, day out. It's your turn, it's your turn, it's your turn, versus the celebration of the core of our country is our family. Yeah.
All right, can you believe we're almost out of time?
Oh,
so
look, I can keep talking.
Not sure that we can, actually, but I'd like to end off on a positive note with each of you. What is the one piece of advice that you would have liked to have given your younger self?
Sorry. Because I write for LinkedIn and follow what I'm writing, and I find it fascinating. They ask me this question, right? So then I start writing. And a blog post is supposed to be about 600 words. I was at 10,000 words and I thought I had a problem. And then I got to 25,000 words and I took it to a publisher and I said, what do you think? And she goes, yeah, there's a book in that, there's a book in that. And that was my first book, Live What You Love. So what I would tell my younger self is to give up my fear to follow my dream. to live with passion, to live with purpose, to know that purpose is about contributing to others. That true happiness comes from what you give, not what from you get. So I laugh because I've been asked that question so many times and it ended up at 72,000 words. So you got the short version.
Fantastic.
I think I would tell my younger self to listen to tell yourself, talk about yourself the way your best friends talk about you. Because I think women all too often talk about themselves in a really demeaning way that if you spoke that way to your best girlfriend, you probably wouldn't be friends. So tell that 16-year-old girl, listen to what your best friends are telling you. You are terrific. You know, you've got this.
Yeah, well, there's so many pieces of advice that you get along the way, and they're all valuable. And mostly they come from people that have walked on this planet for a very long time before you have. And my advice to myself all the time is to listen to our older people, because they have the life experience you cannot buy in a university, you cannot buy in a schoolroom. They have lived experience and they've seen things in their generation and lifetimes far more horrendous than what I've had to experience in mine, and they've survived through it, and they have some incredible advice for all of us. So my advice is listen to them.
Fantastic. Everyone, please join me in thanking our three panellists, Naomi Simson, Olivia Ruello, Mikaela Jade. There's a lot of love in the room for you, all of you. We have a gift for you each from the Press Club. We have a gift of our history, a book written about the Press Club's history. And never before, I don't think we've had an Indigenous entrepreneur here, or a stage of 3 female entrepreneurs, so maybe you get into the next edition. And membership of the club. That's our appreciation for you joining us here today. We do really appreciate it. Thank you.